So many of our nonprofits right now, Tyler, the need is great, but they're also struggling financially because trying to fundraise during the middle of a pandemic is not the easiest thing to do. We are going to bring into the show now Dave Garcia. He's the Executive Director for Affirmations. Thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning.
For those not familiar with your organization, give us a backdrop to your mission.
Sure. Affirmations is Michigan's largest LGBTQ community center. We're located in the heart of Ferndale on 9 Mile. We have been around for more than 30 years, 31 years, and that's pretty unusual in the LGBT rights movement. We own our building, which is also unusual. We paid our mortgage off a number of years ago. And so the community owns the building. It's a beautiful 3-story building, about 17,000 square foot. And we have all types of programming, from youth programs all the way up to one of our largest programs, which is our LGBT seniors. And everything in between, whether that's, we have AA groups and Narcotics Anonymous groups and coming out groups and trans groups. And we have special events all the time. Well, before COVID, people would come in and have art openings. We have a beautiful art gallery. We have a large community space where the governor, for example, has been there twice in the past 2 years to talk to the community before COVID. We do a lot of advocacy and political advocacy for our community as well. So really, we're kind of a one-stop shop. People come for therapy at Affirmations. We have a computer cyber center at Affirmations, a game room at Affirmations for our youth. So there's a lot going on. And then, of course, COVID about this time last year, we had to close our doors. So all of those groups I just mentioned are online right now on Zoom. And we've turned a lot of attention to food insecurity. So every Wednesday and Friday, we have what we call the Let Us Help You food program. And we've been handing out boxes of food out of the back of Affirmations. People can just pull up in their cars, pop their trunk. And then we have volunteers and staff that fill that trunk up with foods or soaps and shampoos or winter clothes, masks, those kind of items that are very necessary right now. To date, we've handed out over 4,500 meals. And we also have been delivering with Instacart meals directly to the front doors of many folks that can't make it to Affirmations, including many of our seniors.
You are so vital to our community. Your organization has 30 years. How has the conversation changed? Because sadly, I feel like sometimes we're having the same conversation.
That's a great question. I mean, obviously there has been significant progress. I just got back from a stint in Los Angeles. I was the executive director of Affirmations. And then I went to LA for just over 5 years to start with the Los Angeles LGBTQ Community Center, which is the largest LGBT organization by far in the world. We started a political wing for that center. And then I came back, it'll be 2 years this May. I came back from Los Angeles, and we are still dealing with just this past Friday, we had so-called Christian protesters out front of Affirmations with their signs of, God hates fags and people, you'll burn in hell and all of it. Here we are giving out food in the back at the same time that we've got these Christian protesters in the front and trying to deal with them. So you're right. Sometimes things seem like they're not getting better, or we're still dealing with the same ignorance and bigotry and homophobia. But the truth is things are getting better. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still progress. And, we have same-sex marriage now. That was a long battle. Things like don't ask, don't tell have been overturned. But we still see, for example, the rise of hate crimes against our community in the past few years. We still see Black trans women of color being killed in the streets of Detroit and really all across this country. So we have much, much work to do, but we have made progress.
How do you stay hopeful?
The youth help a lot. We have a lot of youth programs, and I see the youth on a regular basis and their ideas and what they're going to do in the world of, climate change and how that affects all of us, especially including the LGBT community. You take an issue like immigration. People might not first assume that is an LGBT issue, but it absolutely is. We have people coming from all over the world that if they get turned back to their home countries can be jailed, imprisoned, or killed. And so immigration is important for our community. And when I hear young people talking about their support of DACA students, for example, or their support of making the world a better place for all of us, that gives me a lot of hope for the future generations. And we continue to see more and more people come out, which is always, as Harvey Milk said, the greatest single thing any of us can do is to come out. You know, LGBT folks are in every family, as we know, and every political party and every race. And so when people come out and they force their families and their loved ones to take a long, hard look at this issue, that's why we've seen so much progress. And the young people, the younger generation is coming out in record numbers.
I will say I've been surprised, but also pleased and happily surprised that so many students now, even in junior high and high school, are coming out and being open at sometimes a younger and younger age. And I feel like it's like you said, Dave, it's about the kids, right? They don't have the stigma that I think as our generations have had to deal with, but now it's about educating their parents and their grandparents. But when it comes from, student to student and youth to youth, they seem to be more accepting today.
I think that that's true. That is absolutely true. I would also, though, be careful, and we certainly still see young people who continue to get kicked out of their homes, often for religious reasons. I have said time and time again that the religious exemption is the single greatest threat to our community since HIV/AIDS. And we are seeing the religious exemption and religious exemption laws pop up all over the country, protecting for example, just a couple of years ago, we had a pediatrician right here in Detroit refusing to treat a baby because the baby's parents were lesbians. That person didn't get fired or fined or anything. And we're seeing more and more doctors turn away LGBT people in both primary care and in mental health across the country, refusing to, for example, give hormone therapy to a trans person. And then they hide behind the religious exemption to protect themselves. And I think not only are we seeing more laws pop up, but with a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court, these religious exemption cases are a great threat to our community. It's why Affirmations will be expanding into primary care, because we have a responsibility to protect our own if they're not receiving culturally competent and scientifically accurate care from their own doctors. And by the way, I want to point out that it might not be that the doctor is simply homophobic, right? It could just be a cultural competence and ignorance thing. For example, PrEP. PrEP is a pill that you can take every day, and it's 99.9% effective against the HIV virus. Many doctors don't even know about PrEP. They weren't taught about PrEP, of course, when they were in medical school. And so it may just be an issue of not knowing the best way to treat our youth, our trans community, our seniors. When you think of seniors, think about the life that they lived. Speaking of our youth today, let's go the opposite direction. Many of our seniors lost their jobs. They lost their families. They did not have children for the most part as a safety net. They might have been with their partner for 30, 40 years, and then that partner dies. They didn't have marriage. They don't have the Social Security safety net that the straight community had. Then they go to assisted living, and many of those assisted living facilities are religious-based. And so out of fear of mistreatment, they go back into the closet, which is a horrible thing. And we're seeing that today. So, and again, even if those religious-based institutions, those facilities, aren't homophobic, many simply lack cultural competency to treat the senior community. So we have a responsibility at Affirmations to train doctors and to train therapists and to train health providers. But we also have, I think, a responsibility to treat our own and to protect our own. And so that's why we're going to be expanding vastly into primary care.
When do you anticipate that's going to be happening?
We're close. We're going to start construction very soon. We've already have the designs. One entire floor of our building will be primary care and mental health. We already have a mental health program, but we work with local universities. Their graduate level students get practicum hours to see our clientele on a sliding scale. And then those cases are reviewed by a licensed therapist that we have on staff. I'd like for us to have licensed therapists that can take any insurance from anybody every day of the week at Affirmations. And then, of course, primary care. So the redesign of one of our entire floors to make sure that that can happen, we've already done the design, the coding, all of that stuff is already passed through City of Ferndale. And so we're ready to send out bids and start construction very soon.
Dave Garcia with us here on the MegaCast. He is the Executive Director for Affirmations. And Dave, the Vatican recently came out and said the Catholic Church cannot bless same-sex marriages. How much of a setback is that for people within your community?
Well, it is a setback. But first, let me say, I was raised in a Mexican-American family. I'm very close with all of my family and cousins and aunts and uncles, in a very Catholic family. I was an altar boy my entire youth. I coached basketball and baseball for St. Mary's Catholic sports programs. I worked for Catholic Social Services for a stint. It's deeply personal as well. And I am the only member of my very large Mexican-American family who is no longer Catholic. In fact, I am an atheist. And a lot of that too was just the constant ignorance and homophobia that continues to come from the Catholic Church. When the amendment to the Michigan Constitution to ban same-sex marriage happened back in 2004, it was the Catholic Church who gave the most money to support that amendment. And so we have always been battling with the church. It is a setback, but there are other denominations who do not have the homophobia of the Catholic Church. There's the Episcopal Church, there's the United Church of Christ, there's the Unitarians. The list goes on of Christian denominations that don't have the asinine policy of the Roman Catholic Church. And so I think, part of the reason why you see participation continue to dwindle in the Catholic Church is because of these archaic beliefs that the church continues to espouse. And frankly, I'm not going to be judged by the oldest boys club in the world about who I can love or not love. And, maybe someday when a female pope is apologizing to our community, I'll listen.
Dave Garcia with us here on the MegaCast. He is the Executive Director for Affirmations. And when you talked about taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, we now have a proposed state law that would prevent transgender high school athletes from playing. Where does this come from?
Older generation. I mean, this has never been a problem. Trans students have been playing sports for a long time now without incident. And look, everyone has a right to participate in sports. That's the bottom line. And some trans athletes are better than others. That's always been the case. And this is just blatant discrimination targeting the trans community. It's the next evolution of the bathroom scare, right? That's what it is. And they get political, mileage out of scaring people that the trans folks are gonna attack you in the bathrooms. That has never happened. It's ridiculous. And now that has kind of faded away, and now they've latched on to this new issue of scaring everybody about trans athletes. And of course, it's only the male to female athletes that they're scaring everybody with. And it's sad. I don't think it'll pass. Even if it did, the governor will never sign it into law in our state. And so they're just trying to make political hay and raise money and scare people like they always do.
So with that, when you see proposed bills like this be made public, does it kind of re-energize you to continue this conversation and try to educate the public?
Sure, it does. And, when I got back from Los Angeles, I serve on an organization's board known as Centerlink, and it's the National LGBTQ Community Centers Network. There are over 250 centers throughout the country. And I'm on their board, and they do great work, especially in areas like this, public advocacy, where they can educate all of those LGBT community centers who are often very small. Many are just volunteer-based, who don't have the time and the resources to be able to disseminate information like this to their constituencies. And so Centerlink does the work for them. And when I got back from LA, we created the Michigan Community Centers Network. There are 10 community centers throughout the state of Michigan. In fact, we're meeting later today. We meet every other month to discuss issues just like this and how we're going to respond and how we're going to work together to have more of an impact than any one center could have.
By coming together, there's strength in numbers is with this. So as hopefully we are starting to have more hope with the vaccinations, has the need been greater for you and your center throughout this time?
Not just our center, all centers. And I get a unique perspective serving on the board of Centerlink. All centers across the country have increased need, but more and more difficulty in fundraising. Typically, your fundraising buckets for a nonprofit are going to be individual giving, grants, and special events. Well, Affirmations is no exception. One of our largest fundraising event is our black tie that we do every year. And we lost that last year. That's over $100,000 in revenue. And so another one of our major events is a wine party that we throw at the center. We lost that. That's $50,000 in revenue. And every center is facing similar challenges. Now we've switched focus. We did a telethon. It was a 9-hour-long, professionally produced telethon for Affirmations to try to make up for some of those monies. And we still did a 2-hour virtual black tie type event to try to replace some of those revenues, but it didn't come close to the hit that we took. Now, we are able to apply for things like the PPP from the federal government, and many community centers across the country did receive monies through the stimulus, and that has been a bit of a lifesaver for many of us as well. So while we are losing significant revenue, for example, individual giving, many people aren't giving as much because they're afraid they're going to lose their jobs, or maybe they did lose their jobs, but other people have given more in this time of need. And so for us, individual giving was up, grants were up, but special events took a big hit.
Dave Garcia with us here on the MegaCast. If someone is listening, maybe a parent, they want to start the conversation or they want more information, how can they find that?
I would say go directly to Affirmations website at goaffirmations.org and talk to our program director. Would make a lot of sense, or even reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with the right person. And if we can't help you, we have a vast network of referrals to help. And so we can also get them involved in one of our groups. One interesting silver lining is with everything going on to Zoom is we've had many more young people from rural areas, seniors from rural areas, trans folks from all over the country, and really even out of the country that are starting to come to our groups because they're on Zoom now. And teletherapy has taken off. So we're never going to go back to the way it was. There will be a new normal, but we can get them in touch with any group, whether it's a coming out group, a trans group, a youth group, a senior group, that can help them, and they can be supported by folks just like them.
And it starts sometimes with a conversation and reaching out and starting that conversation. Dave, we so appreciate your time and everything you're doing for the community.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.